Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. Yankees get swept by the Milwaukee Brewers. And it's hard for me to ignore the fact that the Yankees are now 1-8 against teams that are above 500. Second time the Yankees been swept this year. The other time was versus the Rays, and they're a huge player in this whole thing. And the other under 500, above 500 series that they had, the Yankees lost 2 of 3 to the Athletics at home. And these things fluctuate. That record changes as teams, go above and below the 500 number. Like, for example, the Mariners, who you figure may finish above 500. The Yankees, were 2-1 so far against them, right? So right now it looks at its worst. But again, while things have been really good and the overall American League landscape looks good, um, you know, it's where getting swept by the Rays for many, many reasons could be very problematic, as it were last year against the Blue Jays. And also with both teams, you look at the fact, early on, and just in general, home records for the Yankees and the Rays, both teams are better at home. So while it's May and, there's a good chance the Yankees could easily win the division, I don't want to overreact, but I don't want to ignore what, is kind of going on here. And a couple of walk-off losses in games 2 and 3 for the Yankees. Offense didn't do a whole lot of anything. Struck out 39 times. Facing Jacob Misiorowski doesn't help. There was some bad luck involved there, but hey, this is what you're gonna have to face, that type of high quality. If you want to get to the promised land, you're gonna have to do that. And he shut them down in game one. And the Yankees pitching with 11 walks. I mean, 5 by Carlos Rodón, including as well as a hit by pitch in his season debut at the majors. So yeah, I'd say going into the series, look, you lose 2 out of 3. That's understandable. As frustrating as that might be, depending on the way the games go, right? Taking the nature of it aside. But I also threw a caveat that, there is Fried and Schlittler pitching. So it's a little tricky, but always to say, with having the Yankees having won 6 straight series, if they lost 2 out of 3, yes, you can be annoyed by it, but it would be understandable. Milwaukee really is one of the better teams in all, of baseball. And I think that there's a good chance they make the playoffs. They may not win the division. Cubs are off to a good start. They got a good team over there in the NL Central, but I look at that Brewer roster. Sure, it's not filled with stars necessarily, but this has been one of the better teams, the last, I don't know what, 4 or 5 seasons, where they're pretty consistent, haven't, they're always in the mix, it feels like. The team that you don't necessarily think of as far as having real World Series aspirations, but, last year got swept by the Dodgers in the NLCS, but this is a good Brewer team, right? And one of the Yankees' tougher tests, and it didn't work out at all. And, I think my tone would be a little bit different if they had found a way to win a game here. You don't love it, but you can understand it. But now, as it sits, 1-8 against teams above 500, and the Tampa Bay Rays are now 2 games ahead of the Yankees in the loss column. Rays 26-13, Yankees 26-15. So that series, a week and a half or so from now, is going to loom very large. It's a 3-game set at Yankee Stadium. I'll actually be going. It's the first game I'm going to be. Well, actually, I'm not totally sure. I'm going to be going to the game. It may not be the first game I go to. Maybe I may go to one before that, but we'll see. But anyway, this was a series where there weren't a whole lot of good performances, but and again, as far as transactions go, nothing really overly significant that we didn't talk about last time, right? Spencer Jones promoted, Jason Dominguez on the IL, Carlos Rodón, as expected, came back, and Kervin Castro, he was the one that kind of took that revolving door spot. He ended up pitching Friday, gave up a run in 2 innings, and he goes down for Rodón, who takes that 5th spot in the rotation, but who ends up getting the player of the series. And I would say that there was only a few candidates. One that did make it, but really was very good in the one game he started, was Paul Goldschmidt in game 2. Speaking of game 2, though, it goes to Cam Schlittler. Not much of a surprise there. Schlittler, who has the best ERA in the majors, at sitting now at 1.35. A little bit of a scare, though, where Schlittler, takes the ball, a comebacker, off the calf area. but stayed in the game. I hope he makes his next start. It would line up against the Mets. The first game of that series is City Field. But you know, no guarantees. I like to think that the fact that he ended up pitching 5 or so more innings after that initial, hit, I think off the bat of William Contreras, would tell me that there's a better than likely chance that he will still be in there for the next start. Schlittler, and that's what made it more impressive. 6 innings, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. Just really good stuff. What hurts is that he really should have had a 6 win. He should have had a 6 win. Let's transition to the worst player of the series, and a person I'm not going to give it to, but someone that is right top of mind because of him not getting a 6 win, Camilo Doval. Now, he doesn't get the award here. I've given it to him before. That's not why I'm not giving it to him, but he was the one that could not hold the lead. He only needed to get 2 outs in the 8th inning. He didn't even need to get 3 outs. He just needed 2. Couldn't get the job done. And then, again, the bullpen, was certainly an issue, specifically in game 2, a little bit in game 3, but more so game 2. But really, overall, it was the offense. And so I have to go with a player on the offensive side. Now, the guy that probably deserves it statistically, and who I thought I was going to give it to, was actually Ben Rice. Now, he comes back, which is good news. Played all 3 games, was the first baseman for 2 out of the 3 of those games. But and I'm teasing it here, right? Because I was gonna give him the award. He would have deserved it based on stats alone. He went like 1 for 13 with no walks and 5 strikeouts. And my concern with Ben Rice, not concern, but what sucks is just he was on such a roll. And now let's just say he's even healthy from the injury. And he probably is pretty much good. Just it takes you out of your rhythm. And look, Milwaukee was a tough matchup to come back to. Don't get me wrong. And I think, he's going to be just fine. But it sucks because, again, he was putting up, honestly, MVP numbers. Like, seriously. On a team that has Aaron Judge, Ben Rice was putting up better numbers overall. But who I'm going to go with, and it's an individual award, right? I want to keep it that way. You can add on someone to this one just for the sake of it, but Austin Wells. Austin Wells, who has really, not been very good this year. Sure, the numbers are worse than they deserve to be, but the guy only has 5 RBIs. 5 RBIs all season. In this series, he starts games 1 and 2 and goes to combined 0 for 6 with 4 strikeouts. And came up in some pretty big spots along the way. That's what kind of did it for me. He came up in spots in games 1 and 2 to make some things happen and was unable to do so. To a lesser extent, if you want to keep it to the catcher position, JC Escarra, he's really done nothing either. He went 0 for 3 with a walk in game 3. So again, it goes to Wells, but if you want to do kind of a catcher award here, goes to those 2. But, Austin Wells, who is the starter, right? Escarra, look, if you want to get better offense, it's Ben Rice at catcher and Goldschmidt at first. I know they won't do that, and I understand why they won't, but I would consider that as the season moves on. We were kind of in this position last year, and when push came to shove, Wells kept the job. Because look, Ben Rice, catcher's a very important position, and Rice, he can hold his own like in a pinch, but you do take a little bit of a hit there. But I'm just saying, unequivocally, if you want the better hitting options, it's Rice catching and Goldschmidt at first. It just is. It just is. Because Austin Wells is giving you a 183 batting average with a 609 OPS and 5 RBIs all season. Escarra has more RBIs than Wells. Escarra has 6 RBIs and plays significantly less than Wells. Escarra 195 with a 567 OPS. The joke on Escarra is at 250 on base. Like, at least Wells has a 319 on base, so Wells can draw the walk. Escarra barely gets on base when he plays. So again, I know you can't have an all-star at each position. Not that the Yankees do. They don't. But certainly, I don't like what I'm seeing out of that position. And wasn't really something that they addressed. I would have, I thought they could have maybe had found some sort of righty option instead of, let's say, Escarra. Nothing against Escarra. I don't hate him, but just is what it is. Anyway, let's jump to game 1. And in game 1, Max Fried, who he really could have been a candidate as well. right? The reason why he's almost off the hook here for me is because the offense just did nothing in game one, right? Carlos Rodón struggled, but to me, it was a little unfair, similar to Rice, like with Rodón coming back for the first time, because again, those were not great outings. But for Fried, really, really struggled in the second inning badly. Max Fried loses to go to 4-2, 6 innings, 6 hits, 5 runs, 3 walks, and 5 strikeouts. ERA now sitting at 2.91, which is good. Like the overall numbers are good, but Fried has struggled lately to a point where if you want to compare Schlittler and Fried, Schlittler is ahead of Fried on whatever sort of pecking order you want to give. Um, Fried just the strikeouts aren't there at all. Whereas like last year, it was look, he's not a guy. Max Fried is not a guy that's going to get more than a strikeout per inning. Like that's consistent, right? He's not, but still 48 in 50 and 2/3. That is less than you want to see. Um, that's a 7.36 K per nine, which is a lot less than he's normally a guy that's in that his career is 8.7, which is what he was last year. So, again, not necessarily getting the swing and miss stuff. I'm not concerned about him at all. Look, he is going to be he's going to be all right, but Fried has, kind of stumbled a little bit lately. And for Jacob Misiorowski, he was fucking ridiculous. I mean, 6 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 2 walks, and 11 strikeouts in 6 innings to go to 3-2. Um, he's one of the best young pitchers in the game. Throws like over 100 miles per hour consistently, 102, 103. And we talk about a tough debut for Spencer Jones. But yeah, strikeouts up and down the lineup. Every starter struck out at least once in this game. Not a lot to talk about in the Yankee front offensively. Let's just jump straight to the bottom of the second, where they should have challenged Gary Sanchez, the former Yankee, of course. He led off the second inning singled, but there was actually a strike three there that was not challenged by Wells and or Fried. And I get it situationally, but when it can be a strike three, and it was pretty clearly a strike, it was frustrating they didn't do it, and then it opens things up. And it's in games 1 and 3, Fried and Rodón, it's non-competitive walks. Andrew Vaughn, 4-pitch walk. Luis Rengifo, 4-pitch walk. Bases loaded, no out. Former Yankee prospect Brandon Lockridge, who actually got hurt in this game, and kind of a pretty ugly injury as he kind of went into the left and into the corner, not the corner, foul territory in left field, banged his like foot or I guess leg, lower body injury, and needed help off the field. So hope for the best for Lockridge. But Lockridge gets an RBI single to make it 1-0. And at this point, there's a little bit of dink and dunk going on here. But hey, Fried got into the trouble to put himself there. And then Sal Frelick on a play that maybe Chisholm could have made. He leaped and goes over his glove. Sal Frelick, RBI single 2-0. Joey Ortiz, RBI ground out 3-0. Jackson Churio, 4-0. Where Fried was kind of indecisive at times as far as whether to go for the ball or let it go and see if Caballero or Chisholm. There was a few times where just a bit of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it ugly. We saw more ugly stuff. I'd say more in game 2 on the defensive and decision-making side. But yeah, just, it ends up 4-0. And this is what Milwaukee does. It's kind of, look, their style is not too dissimilar from the Tampa Bay Rays. So 4-0 Milwaukee. You have a situation, one of the few times, I mean, Caballero in game 1 was the only one that really did much of anything. He had 2 hits. The rest, I mean, off of Misiorowski, that was it. And he ends up on second after a balk, but Wells strikes out, McMahon line out, Grisham pop out. Trent Grisham also, he didn't start game 2, but yeah, he had a bad series as well. I mean, the one hit he had shouldn't even really have been a hit. It hit Spencer Jones. If it didn't, it would have been a ground out. So anyway, Brandon Lockridge gets another RBI hit, makes it 5-0 Milwaukee in the third. Fried sticks around, which was helpful. Again, the Yankees got swept, so it didn't really result in a whole lot, but he ends up going 6 innings. He threw 40 pitches in the second inning. He could have been out of there a lot sooner. Spencer Jones does walk in his second at bat. Misiorowski's tough, of course. Jones struck out in his first at bat. Ends up getting his first career hit in the third game, which we'll talk about. But yeah, 2 on, 1 out. Wells strikes out looking, and then McMahon strikes out swinging in the fifth. Like I said, Fried goes 6 innings. Misiorowski as well went to 6. Kervin Castro makes his debut with the Yankees. Hadn't pitched in the Major League since 2022. So a good story there. Perseverance. And it ends up where he gives up leadoff double to Joey Ortiz. And it would be a 2-out RBI single for William Contreras to make it 6-0. In the bottom of the eighth, it would be a 1-2-3 inning for Kervin Castro. And at the end of the day, it is a 6-0 win for Milwaukee. So Yankees don't do much of anything there in game one. Game two and game three is more where things are interesting, especially game two. Game two was more frustrating than game three. They both were, but game two was there for the Yankees to take. Schlittler, I already gave you his numbers. He was great. For the Brewers, Kyle Harrison got into trouble, but kind of got out of the jams he needed to. 4 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 4 walks, and 6 strikeouts for Kyle Harrison, the lefty. Paul Goldschmidt with a great game. Paul Goldschmidt's been very good lately, in fact, and the numbers are, again, the OPS is up to 842. It's a home run for Goldschmidt, leadoff, makes it 1-0 Yanks, third homer of the year. And then, like I said, in that first inning is where Schlittler gets hit by that line drive by Contreras, and then he couldn't spot the ball. I think he was kind of just stunned. It was right near him, so it ends up being a hit. It was one of 2 hits that Schlittler allowed. He really kind of locked in, and it was impressive what he did, considering, look, he was gimpy. You could tell, like, he wasn't feeling so good. The second inning is a missed opportunity for the Yanks. Back-to-back walks to start the inning. Caballero strikeout, Jones fly out, and then Austin Wells strikes out to end the inning. The fourth inning was another chance for the Yankees to blow things kind of open a bit, and they only get 1 run. First corners, bases loaded, no out. Spencer Jones strikeout, Austin Wells pop out. Goldschmidt does get a single. He hit it hard, and it makes it 2-0. And then Ben Rice makes the last out of the inning. So again, another missed opportunity to really give yourself some breathing room. Schlittler goes the 6 innings, like I had said. And then Brent Hedrick, who is entitled to mess up. It's frustrating because it's against Jake Bauers, lefty. And like I said before, Hedrick, what's encouraging about him in some ways is that I almost feel like he's been better against righties. Not that he's been bad against lefties, and it's an opportunity. I mean, Hill is more of the lefty guy, but Jake Bauers, who obviously was on the Yankees in 2023, he hits his 6th homer of the year to make it 2-1. You had a nice catch by Spencer Jones as well in that 7th inning where things could have gotten worse. The 8th inning, another big spot for the Yanks. Runners in the corners at 1 out, and it would be, but I should mention, Cody Bellinger's hitting streak comes to an end in game 1. But he's still looking pretty good, though. Bellinger, I think he's still looking sharp at the plate. But Jazz Chisholm Jr. strikes out looking. Hey, look, Jazz ends up getting a hit in game 3, which was big, but that was the runner on first. Again, Jazz running his scoring position is really one of the last guys out of the main players in the Yankees. Jazz is one of the last guys you want up there in that sort of situation. And then Caballero grounds out softly. You need an extra run because Camilo Doval was coming in the 8th with 1 out. Hedrick gets the first out. So all he needs is 2 outs. And he actually gets lucky. He didn't look that good, but he was about to basically get out of there unscathed. But Bryce Terang, 2 strikes, 2 outs with a single, steals second, which was huge. And then William Contreras, game-tying RBI single, make it 2-2. And that would be your score at the end of 8. Camilo Doval has a 6.14 ERA. He is just not a guy you trust. Out of all the guys in the bullpen, there's a lot of question marks, in my opinion. Doval is, for me, the guy I do not want in there, and he has too big a role still. He is part of the circle of trust and should not be. Like, as much as Fernando Cruz, it's never pretty with him, right? You ask me who I'd rather in there, it's Cruz. But the Yankees need to shore up the right-hand pitching out of the bullpen. They got some lefties, right? Like, you could go to war with that in the playoffs, right? Like with Hill and Hedrick and Yarborough to much lesser degree, or whichever starters kind of come out of the rotation. But it's the righties that you're really going to need to work on. And I know, like, look, maybe a Will Warren comes into that equation, but I can't even go there right now. So David Bednar pitches a 1-2-3 ninth inning to jump ahead there. And he only threw 12 pitches. Boone could have went back to in the 10th and didn't. Top of the 10th, and we know the Yankees are terrible in road extra innings. One of the worst in baseball since the Ghost Runner was instituted. Rice strikes out looking. Bad job by Ben Rice as far as not getting the runner over against the lefty Aaron Ashby. So tough matchup. They intentionally walk Judge. Bellinger lines out. And a big hit for Ryan McMahon. Big hit for Ryan McMahon as a bad pitch by Ashby. 0-2 pitch. He hangs it up the middle, single for McMahon. But a terrible job by Aaron Judge. Base running. He's out between second and third. Judge can't do that in that spot because in extra innings, that second run is gigantic. You can't have that there. So we go to the bottom of the 10th, and Boone decides to go to Cruz. It would have been nice to keep Bednar in there. I get taking him out. I would have preferred to leave him in there. even beforehand, because Cruz, the guy is, look what happens. Wild pitch, walk. That is Fernando Cruz, but he almost gets out of it. Gary Sanchez is a pinch hitter, flies out to shallow right, so no advance. Runners in the corners with one out. And where Cruz fucks up is he has Shohei 2. He's in a position to make something happen. And what does he do? It wasn't a horrible pitch, but it's a splitter that was hittable. And Shohei is able to pound it into the ground to the shortstop side, and it's a single. 3-3 game. Cruz needed a strikeout, didn't get it, and now we go to Tim Hill. And this was perplexing. Tim Hill actually does his job, but makes a terrible decision that made no sense. Bryce Terang reaches on a fielder's choice where Hill has the easy play at first. It's the no doubt play. And it wasn't like Hill forgot how many outs there were. He was way too aggressive, tries to get the out of third, and he actually hits the runner, Rengifo. I mean, Tim Hill, who was one of my favorites on this team, that was really stupid. Really, really dumb. And it cost them the game, basically. And I still think the Yankees were going to lose, to be quite honest with you. Once it got tied up, I think eventually they were going to lose. But it would be William Contreras with a game-winning walk-off sac fly to make it 4-3. So a very frustrating game the Yankees had right in their grasp and found a way to lose. Let's go to game 3. That one sucked. Game 3 was not much better. And Carlos Rodón could not find the strike zone. Now, look, it was his first outing. I'm not going to make a big deal of it, but let's make this clear. With the rotation looking like it does, in my opinion, there's no guarantee that Carlos Rodón, come playoff time, if the Yankees make it, which they should, they definitely should. I can say that. I'm not jinxing anything there. It is a long season, but you look at the American League, it'd be, embarrassing if they missed. Carlos Rodón, you look at Schlittler, Fried, Garrett Cole, if he's good. Like Carlos Rodón, and yeah, look, again, Will Warren has looked good for the most part. Everything being equal, I know they'll choose Rodón over Warren, but like in the American League, in the ALDS, for example, sometimes you only go 3 starters. I mean, a lot of times you go 4, but the point is that there's a lot of competition, and Carlos Rodón, it's way premature to go here, but he needs to pitch well, like for his own sort of spot in the rotation by the end of the year. But, look, Rodón, what you saw here was a guy who, like last year, was good in terms of opposing batting average. He only got 2 hits. He wasn't like he was hit hard, but he was his own worst enemy. 5 walks and hit by pitch. Hopefully he can right the ship next time. But 4 1/3 innings, 2 hits, 3 runs, 5 walks, and 4 strikeouts. And for the Brewers, Logan Henderson pitched pretty well. 5 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts. The Yankees get on the board again early. Aaron Judge, on Mother's Day, hitting his 16th home run of the season. I believe now currently tied for the major league lead, with Kyle Schwarber, who's been on a bit of a tear lately. So 1-0 Yanks. And then top of the second, you get Spencer Jones with his first hit. Rough series for him, going 1 for 9, 5 strikeouts, a walk, but he gets this RBI single to knock in Caballero to make it 2-0 Yanks. But, not a whole lot going for the Yankees from there. And then at the bottom of the 4th is when it just goes wrong for Rodón. 4-pitch walk to Contreras, 4-pitch walk to Sanchez. He hits Andrew Vaughn, and then he gets Rengifo to ground out. They get the force at home. Garrett Mitchell's sac fly makes it 2-1. So, okay, maybe he gets out of it. But a wild pitch by Rodón, mostly blamed to Rodón, slight bit of blame to Escara, but it was tough. But he could have made the play. And then Blake Perkins, 2-run single. That is tough. That, specifically that is tough. To allow the wild pitch to go 2nd and 3rd, and then Perkins gets to make it 3-2. That's a really, really bad inning by Carlos Rodón. The Yankees would tied up in the top of the 6th off of lefty reliever DL Hall. 2-out walk Bellinger, RBI double Chisholm Jr. to tie it up at 3. It would be a combination of Paul Blackburn and Fernando Cruz for a scoreless 6th. There was a throwing error by Ryan McMahon. Ryan McMahon has had issues as far as throws. He needs to improve on that. It was the 5th error of the season on McMahon. As much as the offense has improved and he makes great defensive plays, that needs to get better. Let's go to, Cruz pitches a good 7th inning, so Fernando Cruz gets 4 outs. Bottom of the 8th, Tim Hill, he gets a scoreless 8th inning, and the Yankees offense is just not doing anything at all here. There isn't much for me to say, honestly. Bottom of the 9th, David Bednar, 2 out, first pitch to Bryce Terang. He hangs a curveball. Just a terrible pitch by Bednar, and Bryce Terang hits it out, walk-off homer. Brewers win again, 4-3 via the walk-off. And so Yankees dropped to 26-15, and now it'll be a 3-game set at Baltimore. Now, if you remember, the Yankees had a 4-game sweep home against Baltimore. This is a series where I'm hoping for the Yankees to take 2 out of 3, but know very well that Baltimore is going to be hungry. I mean, it's a divisional matchup, but you take that aside, the Orioles, like, in terms of these probable pitchers, it's tough on the Baltimore end, but Baltimore is slightly better at Camden Yards. Anyway, Ryan Weathers, who, got his start pushed back a bit because he had illness, he will be back on the mound. He's been pitching pretty well lately. And he will go against Brandon Young, who the Yankees didn't see last time out. Brandon Young with, not very impressive numbers on the whole. Game 2, it'll be Will Warren looking to bounce back from a rough outing last time against Texas. And it's listed as TBD for Baltimore. And then Game 3 will be Max Fried, as well, looking to bounce back. They had this listed as TBD, but I tend to think it could be Kyle Bradish, who the Yankees did well against last time, but has done well in the past against the Yanks. So we'll see. The road trip continues. Bad start in Milwaukee. Hopefully, Yankees get back to better things against, under 500 teams like the Orioles. But I'd also expect to see the Orioles have a little bit of a bounce back after that Yankee 4-game sweep. So it won't be easy. I think that winning 2-3 is well within reason, but I don't think it's going to be a sure shot by any means. But Yankees, a very disappointing weekend in Milwaukee. They're swept by the Brewers, and their 6-game series winning streak is over.